Well, welcome to the exciting topic of instructional equivalencies. My name is Jason Garvey. I am manager of instructional design. And when I say exciting topic, it really is one of those topics that's very important, but can be a little time consuming. No, pun intended because of the time. But it can be a little time consuming and a little hard to wrap your mind around. And so I'm hoping today perhaps we can have a little bit more clarity on this topic. So these are our learning objectives for this brief session. So we want to start with defining what the credit hour is. We want to differentiate between instructional time and assigned homework. Then we want to define instructional time. That way we have a good understanding of what's inside that category. And then we want to think through some of the strategies and some of the activities, and then we want to talk about some of the time commitment for these instructional activities. So those are our learning objectives for today. So we'll start with what is a credit hour. So as we think about like the Department of Education and the Pennsylvania Education Authority, and even the Middle States Higher Ed authority that's out there as far as like accreditation, we end up with a credit hour for measuring educational credits, and it's based on the number of classroom hours per week throughout a term. And then we have another terminology called a Carnegie unit, and a Carnegie unit also helps us to measure what's happening inside each semester. And so we have 1 unit of credit equating to 2 hours of student homework per week. And then inside that, we also have 1 hour of instructional time per week for each unit of credit. So what this means is that 1 unit of credit equals to 3 hours of student work per week for 14 weeks. When we talk about student work, we have to note that student work does not factor in assigned homework, as this would not be instructional time. Instead, the expectation is that those 2 hours of homework per week, that's across, let's say, a 14-week semester. So you're assigning 2 hours of homework per week across a 14-week semester. So if you have a 3-credit course, that would then equal 6 hours of homework per week, with a total of 84 hours over the semester. So again, these can be a little bit hard to wrap your mind around because they're 2 different terminologies that are used to determine instructional time and homework within a college credit hour. So we're going to go into this a little bit more to hopefully help this out. So in a 3-credit class, like I was saying, you have 60 hours of homework equaling a total of 90 hours over a 15-week class. Now, when we think about, this might be a little ahead of ourselves, but when we think about a 14-week class, you want to be in somewhere in that 84 to 90 hours range, and you don't want to go any less than that, because we're still talking, even if it's a 14-week class, we're still talking about the same amount of time. So for the typical 3-credit class, a learner spends 3 hours per week receiving instructional time. So 3 hours of instructional time per week equals 45 hours of instructional time over a 15-week class period. Again, this all gets a little bit muddled, so the best way to kind of view this is if we view it in more of a chart form. So when we think about instructional time, and let's say we have a 3-credit course that is then meeting 3 hours per week. Again, that's based off of the credit hour. So for the credit hour, it's the unit measuring the number of classroom hours per week throughout a term. So if we have a 3-credit course, we're meeting 3 hours per week for 15 weeks, and so 3 times 15, you end up with 45 hours of instructional time. Assigned homework, that's where the Carnegie credit comes in, or the Carnegie unit comes in. So the Carnegie unit is saying if you have a 3-credit hour, they should be doing 2 hours per week per credit. That's 3 times 2 equals 6 hours of assigned homework, and over 15 weeks, you end up with 90 hours of homework. So again, the instructional time is based off of the credit hour, and it's a unit measuring the educational credit or the instructional credit and time that's based on the number of hours inside the classroom whereby the student would be receiving instruction from the faculty member. The assigned homework is based off of the Carnegie unit, and so this is saying how much homework is a student assigned. So we're saying one credit equals 2 hours per week. So a 3-credit course equals 6 hours, and over 15 weeks, we then end up with a total of 135 hours. So 45 hours of instruction, 90 hours of homework. So what we end up with is, if we have a 14-week semester, or if we have a semester that is less than 15 weeks, our hours still have to match up to 135 hours. Right around there. We don't want to go too far under or too far over. Too far under, and we're really teaching a 2-credit course. Too far over, and we're at a 4-credit course. So it's right around that 135 hours. So that means, these 4-week classes, or these 7-week classes, really become condensed and really become intensive condensed, because we're still trying to fit in the same number of instructional hours and assigned homework. So now sort of the question becomes, wait a minute, you want me to have 45 hours of instructional time, but maybe my class is only scheduled for an hour and a half a week for instructional time. So now we get into what is instructional time, and what are the factors in instructional time. So starting with the basics, instructional time, what is it? It is directly related to the objectives of the course. So the whole, as you look at your course and what are your objectives for the modules, instructional times is measuring, and it is very specifically measuring the objectives of the course or of the module. It's an activity or assessment that has the direct oversight of the faculty member teaching the course. It is something that, if we think about our experience inside a classroom teaching, right? That's very, very familiar to us in terms of, okay, I'm inside the classroom teaching for 3 hours a week. That's instructional time. So when we think about it for online, we could have in some form some sort of equivalent activity that would be conducted in the face-to-face classroom. So the most obvious example is you're teaching online in a synchronous session. Your students have gathered around some video conference tool, and you're instructing them for an hour and a half per week or per class session or something like that. But there's other things instructional time could be. But the big caveat here is it's not assigned homework. It's not homework assignments. It's not reading a textbook is not instructional time. So let's think about this a little bit further. When we think about instructional time, one of the big components that has to be there, besides it being measurable, besides it being tied back to the objectives and having the direct oversight of the instructor, one of the big reasons why it's not homework assignments such as reading is that it has to be regular and substantive interaction between the students and the instructor. And this could be synchronously or asynchronously. But again, the big thing here is it has to be on a predictable and on a regular basis. So it is regular, and it's substantive. So it's going to happen throughout the course. It's not an ad hoc thing. It's planned into the course. It is a predictable part of each week in which the student's receiving instructional time, either synchronously or asynchronously, and it's substantive interaction. It's a formative type of interaction. So this includes monitoring the student's academic engagement and success, and instructors are promptly and proactively engaging in substantive interactions with the student. So the big key words in that, and again, this comes from the Department of Education and from the Carnegie Foundation trying to define instructional time. The big sort of takeaways is it's regular and it's substantive, and it's proactively, and it's not a reaction. So what is substantive interaction? So it is engaging students in teaching, learning, and assessment consistent with the content under discussion. Okay, so it's going to be engaging them in the content under discussion, meaning in those modules or in those weeks, and it's again tying back to those objectives. So it has to include at least two of the following. You are providing, as the instructor, direct instruction. You are assessing or providing feedback on a student's coursework. Or you're providing information or responding to questions about the content of a course. Or you're facilitating a group discussion regarding the content of the course. Or other instructional activities approved by the institution or by the accrediting agency. So in that, you have direct instruction, you're providing feedback, you're providing information, you're responding to questions about the content. You are facilitating a discussion about the content of the course. So again, the big thing here is content of the course. It is substantive. It is providing direct instruction. It is providing information to the learner about the content of the course. So, what are some activities or strategies for this? Now that we've kind of defined instructional time, we have to think about what are some activities, so if we think about a student reading an article, that in and of itself wouldn't necessarily be instructional time. However, if we couple that with some sort of a reflection piece that the student has to engage in, that becomes instructional time. So the students are asked to apply concepts or to relate practices to personal experience or to analyze some sort of article and to reflect back on it. In that reflection piece, you're giving, guess what? Substantive feedback, regular feedback to the student. Assigned instructional material. Okay, so this could be instructional time as well. This could be a video. This could be an article they have to read, a podcast they have to listen to, but this is expanding upon course concepts and objectives. This could also be a lecture from the instructor, whether that's synchronous or asynchronous. Case studies, simulations, and problem-based learning. So this is instructor directed, and so students have a set of tasks to complete that involve some sort of research, a planning, a meeting. Again, this could be some sort of group project or individual project. There's some sort of analysis, there's some sort of synthesis. And along the way, as they're doing these case studies, these simulations, or these problem-based learning, guess what's happening? The instructor is giving periodic, planned guidance and feedback to the learner to support specific learning outcomes. Let's say the student is supposed to write a research paper. So You then create assignments along the way for students to submit their writings to you. That then becomes the predictable base for the interaction, for the instructional time. So students then consult with you on their research or on their writing. And again, they are submitting things to you, and you're providing direct feedback to them that is substantive. Discussion boards are part of instructional time. These are structured to provide guided or instructor-mediated discussions within a specified time frame and within a specified rubric. So again, students are responding to your direct instruction, which would be your question, and then you're providing feedback as they answer the questions. That's instructional time. Another one could be a group project. Again, this has very, very specific learning objectives, and the instructor is going to receive project updates from the learners. So the learners will be collaborating and researching, analyzing, preparing a project, and then submitting those parts along the way to the instructor for substantive feedback. Same goes for the individual project. The instructor is having them submit items along the way and providing substantive feedback. The student then is integrating the feedback into their project. An individual presentation. So a student then has to present to the class for feedback from the instructor. So students are then researching, they are compiling, they are creating a presentation according to an established rubric and aligned to specific course objectives. That's instructional time. And again, once they end up presenting, you then give them substantive feedback, or you could have them submitted in parts, and you are providing feedback to them. A journal or some sort of exercise where they have to reflect back on the learning that's taking place, or on their thoughts on the coursework. And this is used as a way for you to provide feedback to them. And again, you are directing that journal exercise. Okay, write about X, Y, or Z. Online meetings. This is pretty standard, right? This is part of instructional time. You are meeting together. The faculty member is leading this time. And this could be a time to talk about course concepts. This could be an opportunity to perhaps clarify homework assignments, or to think through how our assignments being completed, or you're providing direct instruction on specific course content. Maybe not used as much today, but these would be synchronous group chats. And again, this is a little bit different from forums. Forums are by and large asynchronous. So synchronous group chats would be everybody gets together and everybody's chatting at one time. Think of AOL Instant Messenger as that. And again, it's the instructor leading the conversation. The last one on here I have is quizzes and tests. This is instructor time. This is where you're providing the student with an opportunity where you're guiding them with directed questions to assess their knowledge, and then guess what happens at the end? You provide them feedback, and it's substantive feedback. So those are some activities and strategies. Now, how much time does it take for the student to complete these activities, and how much instructional time are we talking about? So if we think about the first one, an article review with some sort of reflective piece, the article review equals around 1 hour of instruction, and they have a reflection that equals about an hour. Assigned instructional materials, let's say they're watching a 1 hour video, that equals 1 hour of instruction. A 30-minute podcast equals 30 minutes of instruction. Let's say that they're reading articles, and again, they have to do something with that. It's not just reading; they have to have some sort of like direct correlation with an instructional time. So typically it's around 180 to 200 words per minute, which the student is able to read. And that can vary based on your learner. If we think about case studies or simulations, these are 1 to 3 hours per week of self-directed study, and then 1 hour per week for the review of feedback from the instructor. If we think about consultations, and again, I'm not going to go through all the time here. I'm going to give you a really great resource at the end. So consultations with faculty on research and writing. If the student is going to have to review resources, that's 1 to 3 hours per week. They are writing drafts, that's an hour per week, and then they are reviewing instructor feedback and revising homework or revising their work. That could be a half an hour to 1 hour per week. Discussion boards, one posting typically takes a half an hour to an hour, and then reading and responding to 1 to 3 other posts equals 1 to 1.5 hours. Group project and individual guided project are very, very similar in terms of the time, in terms of 1 to 3 hours per week, and then 1 hour for review of feedback from the instructor. Again, this is regular, this is substantive feedback. Individual presentations, so if they have to do a 10 to 20 minute presentation, that's going to take about 1 to 2 hours, and then you're providing them feedback, which equals about an hour or so. Let's see. For the journal, or that's very similar again to the discussion forums in terms of time, and then we have the online meetings. 1 hour equals 1 hour. The synchronous group chats, which don't happen as much anymore, 1 hour chat equals 1 hour of instruction, and a quiz or test, 1 hour quiz or exam equals 1 hour of instruction. So you may be asking, where do we get all this from? Where did these things come from? This isn't just something that we made up or something that just NCC made up. These are the standards that have been agreed upon, and that the Carnegie Foundation, along with the Department of Education, state this is the time. And so there are various resources I can certainly send your way in terms of that. But nearly all the universities would have consensus on this is the time for activities. So if we think about how does this realistically live within a course, let's say that we have a 3-credit course that meets asynchronously online. Each week you have a 30-minute instructional video. That equals 30 minutes. Also in the week, you have 1 discussion board with 1 post and 2 follow-up postings. So that would equal 1.5 hours of instruction. Then you have a weekly case study with the student reviewing instructor feedback equals 1 hour. So now your total instructional time equals 3 hours. Let's say you have a 3-credit course that meets synchronously online, again, in real time. Let's say you have a 2-hour live class session, online, meeting once per week. That 2-hour live class session equals 2 hours. The student then, during the week, has to do some sort of a journal posting with feedback from the instructor. That equals 1 hour of instructional time. So again, you're meeting that total instructional time of 3 hours per week. So for each credit, we are looking at 1 hour of instructional time. So a 3-credit course needs to have 3 hours of instructional time per week. Let's say you have a 3-credit course that meets hybrid. So it meets online and there's a face-to-face component. So let's say the student has to read an article and then has to do a discussion board assignment based on that article. That's going to equal 1 hour. Then there is a discussion board with 1 initial post, 1 follow-up posting. That equals 1 hour. Then your face-to-face component is a weekly in-person lab instructor, or a weekly in-person lab instruction. That equals 1 hour. So your total instructional time is at 3 hours. Now let's say you have a 3-credit course that meets asynchronously and synchronously at this. So there's some sort of combination going on there. So let's say you have 1 hour of a live class session meeting once a week. And then let's say throughout the week, you as the instructor either record a lecture or you have them listen to a 1 hour lecture or a 1 hour video or whatever. That would equal 1 hour. Then you have a group project where the student is receiving feedback from the instructor. That equals 1 hour. So your total instructional time equals 3 hours. These are some helpful resources, and I can make these available as well. One of the best resources out there, however, is from Penn State. Penn State has an hours of instructional activity estimator. And so this is for the instructor who's trying to determine, have I done too much in my course or have I not done enough in my course? So this is pretty simple to use. You would expand each section and say, I have 10 discussions. Students have to respond to each other. I have 10 some sort of like reflection paper, and those equal 1 page. Are students required to read other papers? No, they're not. I can even come down and say I've got 7 case studies, and it's 2 pages per week, right? And then what are they going to be reading? What are they going to be watching? Again, I can go through this, and this is helpful for you as the instructor as you are designing your course, and as you've got those assignments and activities built out, you can then go through and enter all this information. And again, they've got, are you doing synchronous communication, such as conference calls, chats? Remember the whole synchronous AOL Instant Messenger chat. Are you doing phone calls? Are you doing some sort of video or web conferencing? What sort of projects do you have? Again, you're just entering in what you have, how many projects, how many do you have per week, what's the size of the project? Is there a service learning project, right? And then for the assessment, it's online quizzes and tests. How many do you have? How many minutes do you expect the quiz to take? How many minutes do you expect the exam to take? Okay. Then you can put in how long your course length is and the number of credits. And guess what it spits at you? Well, you can add more activities as well if something's not listed there. Then it comes down and it says, okay, I'm going to break it down for you. This is what you have inside your course. So again, I only entered writing assignment. So it's saying, oh, you have all writing. That's all you have in your course. But this is where it's going to say, here's the instructional, and here's the learning activities, and here's the total hour. So right now, I only put in one category. So my estimated hours of instructional activities equals 65 instead of the recommended 135. So again, this is breaking it out. This is the instructional time, and then this is the assigned homework. They're just using the word learning activities. So this is an incredibly helpful resource to work through. And some of this is really helpful if you have students who are not engaged with your course, or let's say that you're doing discussion forums and you're not getting responses from the students, or they are not engaged in the discussion forum, or you have some sort of other assignment that's just, you're not getting the students' engagement and their interaction is lacking. So it could be maybe you have too much in the course. Maybe you've dumped a lot of stuff in the course and you've done, let's say you've done 15 discussion forums, you've done 15 journals, you've done 15 case studies, you've done 15 quizzes, you've done 15 synchronous class sessions, and so you have all these components in there, and then it spits back a number and you realize, oh, maybe my students are overloaded with too much information, or maybe you don't have enough. And so students aren't putting forth the effort because they don't feel as though they have to, because there's not enough to engage them in the course. So this is a website that is extremely helpful, and it was built with some fine folks over at Penn State to really help us understand, or to really help faculty understand what's happening inside your course. So that is instructional time, that is instructional hours, that is assigned homework. I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for attending.